All right, so this episode is about Hollywood and the Mafia, the realism, with me and Pete, Sirius and Pete. Let's start off with Goodfellas.
I was gonna say that's a good place to start. I think Goodfellas, outside of The Godfather, is probably the most well-known mafia movie. People think of mafia movies, and they're either gonna think of The Godfather or they're gonna think of Goodfellas. Um, Goodfellas was my real intro to the mafia. Before I even started like researching it, that was the first time I was really ever exposed to the idea. Before Goodfellas, if someone mentioned the mafia to me, I thought like, guys in suits and machine guns, and I didn't really know a lot about it. And I think Goodfellas was like a good popping off point into the rest of it.
I agree.
And it's a well made movie too. Like just the editing, the constant music changes. Like the whole movie, you really do feel like you're on like like Henry Hill when he's all coked out. You kind of feel like that because it just shoots from scene to scene to scene, and it's never boring, man. Like Goodfellas is one of those movies where like I can turn it on halfway through and I'll just like sit through the rest of it. Doesn't matter
That's
what part it's on.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah. But in terms of realism, it's about 50-50. It's based on the book Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi and Henry Hill. Uh, as a movie, it's really good. Hill's story itself is a little bit suspect. Um, he essentially, from a mob history standpoint, although there are like basics of truth involved, he does kind of, especially in the movie side of things and the book, he kind of hypes himself up a little bit. He was essentially just a drug dealer who had mild connections to Paul Vario and Paul's son, Paul Jr.
Yeah,
Um, More so even than connections to Jimmy Burke or Tommy in the movie. Like he was way closer in real life to Paul Jr. Right off the bat, they don't have a Paul Vario Jr. character in the movie. And they kind of like circumvent that with a relationship with well, in the movie his name's Jimmy Conway, but in real life his name was James Burke. He was a Casey and Colombo associate. He kind of dealt with both. So they kind of like replaced that real Vario Jr. connection with Burke and Tommy DeSimone. And that's not to say he didn't know them in real life, but from what I understand, he mostly was closer to Vario Jr. than those
yeah.
two.
Jimmy the Gent.
So like again, like Goodfellas is in terms of the story, like the Lufthansa heist and the basic overarching plot of Hill's life, it's pretty accurate. But again, like if you read the book, he kind of like makes himself out to be a little bigger than he actually was.
Yeah,
Uh,
he strikes me as well. He struck me as a bullshit artist.
yeah, like again, I'm not saying he wasn't involved. He was, an associate, but
Oh yeah,
he wasn't getting tables at like the
no,
Copacabana. Like he wasn't like I think the biggest thing with Goodfellas is it kind of makes them out to be like they're full blown members of the mob. I know it doesn't say they're made, but it kind of gives that impression with the amount of respect they have.
yeah.
Out of those three, Burke or Conway, as he's called in the movie, would have been the only guy with that clout outside of the made guys. Um, Another thing is Paul Vario Senior. In the movie, he's Paul Cicero. That's what they call him. In real life, in the movie, he's kind of represented as this like old school, like oh don't deal drugs, kind of fatherly type guy. Um, in real life, he was a real piece of shit. Like he was a woman abuser. He had a rape case. He was a very an arch criminal. Whereas in the movie, they kind of soften him up a bit.
Yeah, he was dirty in real life, the way he dressed and everything.
Yeah, he was way more of a street guy in real life than the movie. In the movie, they make it seem like he's like, the boss or something. He was just a capo. He was briefly acting conciliary for Luchesse's at one point, but you know, just a scumbag. And that's one thing. I I think funnily enough, Tommy DeSimone's character in real life was apparently worse in real life than he was in the movie. So that's
Yeah.
something the movie also kind of toned down a bit. The biggest inaccuracy with Hill's story is just like little things here and there, like Billy Bats. There's like a newspaper clipping that lists him as in his 30s at one point, and so he probably would have died around that time. So a lot of people, again, this isn't like 100% known, but there is questions if Billy Bats Benvena, that was his name in real life, was even made because he was so young at that point when the books were closed.
Right.
So that's another thing that Hill kind of insinuates in the book and in the movie that he was that Tommy was killed for killing a made guy, when in reality it's more likely he was, Bats was just a high-ranking associate.
Yeah. And the way Billy Bats died, we don't know, but they stole that from Frank Collada's story. He has an interview if you guys want to check it out.
Yeah, Collada has a story. I don't remember the name, but he kind of says that like that scene where they're stabbing Bats to death in the car, that scene is stolen from another case, and that's very likely. But yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much Bats went missing. And another thing is Bats's photo in real life, they only found a real photo of him like last year. Before that, if you looked up Billy Bats on Google, a photo of Pat the Cat Spirito, guy with glasses, a Philly mobster would show up on Google Images for some reason. And
I
that was
saw.
kind of like, yeah, that was a bit of a joke in like the Mafia community.
Yeah.
Moving on to Casino, I kind of like Casino a little bit better than Goodfellas in a weird way. Very similar movies. Casino obviously is about the Las Vegas skim in the 70s and 80s. Very good movie, another Scorsese classic. I think that's also based on a Pileggi book. In real life, his name's Ace Rothstein in the movie, right? In real life, his name was Lefty Rosenthal.
Right.
Um, and then they changed in the movie Nicky Santoro. His name is in real life. His name was Tony Spilotro, and he's a pretty accurate apparently to the movie version in real life, if not worse. Super violent, short Chicago outfit hitman. Um, just a total lunatic.
Frank Collada, who was played by Frank Vincent, he was sitting next to Scorsese while they were doing the scenes.
Yeah, yeah. Collada was one of the. I don't know what his name in the movie is, but it's Frank Vincent's character, and
Frankie,
Collada. Yeah, yeah. Collada was like kind of the main. I guess giving advice to Scorsese during that movie. But that movie is really good. I think it deals with violence a lot better than Goodfellas. It's obviously the outfit was, in my opinion, at least way more violent than the New York families. And
uh,
it does a good job too of Casino does a good job of showing the other families. Like there's a Kansas City character, DeLuna. He's like the underboss.
yeah,
There's a Cleveland guy. It just, in general, does a good job of showing like that Midwest side of the mafia.
I loved it.
And it's really good. The only real inaccuracy that sticks out to me is that Spilotro was killed in a cornfield. In real life, he was killed, but he was killed in a house. One of the guys who killed him was Nick Calabrese. He was involved in it. He was a future Chicago outfit informant, and he pretty much said that Spilotro and his brother were beaten to death with like bare hands in a basement, and then buried in a cornfield. So
That's what.
a cornfield does factor in, but they weren't killed in that way.
Yeah, that's what Frank Collada said too. He was they brought him to a house in a basement.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how they did it. But no, overall, Casino is really good. I think just because I've seen Goodfellas so many times, I kind of like Casino slightly better. I need to watch it again, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, I gotta give it another rewatch for the thousandth time.
Yeah, and I wish there was more like Chicago outfit era movies like that, set in the 70s, but I can't really think of any other.
I know.
Moving on to The Godfather. Right off the bat, The Godfather is just pure Hollywood. It's not based on anything in real life. It's not based on a real story. Does it take inspiration? Sure. The guy who plays Luca Brasi was a Colombo associate. You do have a weird mafia connection for the first movie. I don't know so much about the second movie, but the first movie, Joe Colombo and the Italian American Civil Rights League was involved in it because they're like, oh, this is gonna make Italians look bad, and there was all these like things that the production had to do, like, oh, don't use the word mafia, don't use the word Cosa Nostra. So I don't think they ever used those words in the movie because of that, but there was some kind of like mafia overreach into the production. The Godfather is kind of how they want to be seen, and take this with a grain of salt. But Michael Francese is like, oh, when The Godfather came out, everyone started acting like they were in The Godfather, like talking that way and dressing that way, and like I don't know if that's true, but there is no doubt that it obviously had a cultural impact. Moving on, Donnie Brasco. It's one of the underrated mafia movies. It's not unknown. A lot of people have seen it, especially if you're into gangster movies. But it is probably the most accurate, in my opinion, based on it's super focused on a single event in mafia history, whereas most of these other historical mafia movies just kind of bounce around during certain time periods. Donnie Brasco obviously is about Joe Pistone. He was a FBI agent who, well, at first he infiltrated the Colombos, and then they were kind of suspicious, so he got hooked up with Lefty Ruggiero, and then he got kind of like he infiltrated the Bonannos essentially, and it's accurate in how they talk, like like the words they throw around, like wise guy or like forget about it, and like just the street stuff is super accurate, and then the historical stuff is super accurate. Like it's based on the Three Capos hit, which was a kind of a beef in the Bonanno family. There's Sonny Red, Phil Giacalone, and Dom Trinchera. Uh, Pretty much those three were kind of like vying for power, and they were taken out by the Philip Rastelli faction. Um, and Joe Messino, who was the future Bonanno boss, was involved in that. And Joe Messino's not in the movie, but there's other big historical guys like Sonny Black, and you know,
Yeah. The one thing about Lefty, they made him look like he was a bum when he wasn't.
yeah, no, he was a super serious guy. He killed people. He made a lot of money. Another, I guess one of the few accuracies of the movie is that in real life it was Sonny Black who got a call to come in and was killed, and before he was killed, he said like, "Oh, I'm glad it was Donnie." That was Sonny Black, Michael Madsen's character.
Yeah.
In the movie though, they make it seem like it was Lefty who said that.
Yeah.
Um, while yeah, Lefty was super close to Donnie in real life and in the book, the Donnie Brasco book that it's based on that Pistone was involved with, uh, he was actually closer to Sonny Black in a way.
Yeah.
So they kind of just I guess they just kind of focused on Lefty's side of things, but again, like I really wish they had shown Joe Messino because he was a super big part of that story, but in the movie, I guess he was still the boss when that movie came out, and they didn't want to they didn't want to like shake the bed too much with that.
That was my favorite Pacino in the movie.
I agree. I think that movie is a very good mix of the quiet. Um, I'm not saying he's like Michael Corleone, but that kind of like quieter, reined in Pacino, and then he also has those moments where he's like the bombastic, like yelling and like you know what I mean. It's a good middle ground between like those two sides of Pacino.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so this was episode 3 of what Hollywood got right and what was bullshit with Sirius and Pete, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yep. See ya.
All right, bro.